Look, I'm a teacher myself. I was a university professor for 32 years. I know the inside of a classroom. My word for teachers at every level would be this. I know that the demands on your time are crushing. You're teaching this and you're being asked to teach that, and the state legislature has a new demand, and Common Core wants you to do something else. Find some time for World War II. Find some time for D-Day. The modern American Republic, this crazy, fractious country we live in where we're always arguing about everything, it was built during World War II. It was formed during D-Day. If you want to be an American, know something about World War II. And I think as a teacher, you want to teach something about it too. What I would say to a student is, well, why do I need to learn about this? I would say because it's the most important day in the history of your country. It's the most important 4 years in the history of your country. Why would you not want to know something about that? This is a democracy. It's only going to work if we know who we are, where we've come from, what the country's supposed to be doing. And you can find out by studying World War II.
Hello, I'm Lewis Turner.
And I'm Jeannie Blaylock. 75 years since D-Day. I'll tell you something, Lou and I have learned so much about this monumental event.
So it is our honor to take you on a journey with us to the beaches of Normandy, France. So let's go on a journey now, back to history.
This was one of the worst, most inhumane, most brutal, most murderous regimes in the history of the world.
The future of the world was on the brink of being consumed by evil. The scourge of Nazi tyranny had taken nearly all of Europe. The Allies knew Hitler had to be stopped at any cost.
This was a man who literally wanted to purify the human race.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
A bold plan was formed.
England, General Dwight D. Eisenhower and his deputy commanders chart the liberation of a lost continent.
The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you.
Thousands of young men prepared to go to the most dangerous place on the planet. To engage an army bent on conquering the world. To destroy their ability to make war. And annihilate evil before it spread across the earth.
150,000 troops, 11 or 12,000 aircraft, and around 7,000 ships.
9,000 men died that one day between the Americans, the British, the Canadians. Like I say, you're there and you do what you gotta do.
We saved the world from tyranny. We saved the world from a psychotic leader.
You will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
This was the day that America became a great global power.
What was so important about D-Day?
I don't know what D-Day is.
Do you know what D-Day was?
No, ma'am.
Who fought in D-Day?
I do not know.
All Americans, because of our democratic way of life, need to know more about their own history.
So now, after 75 years, to learn to stand in awe of the bravery, the sacrifice, and the commitment to victory, we take you to the beaches of Normandy. This is a First Coast News special presentation, D-Day, Rendezvous with History. We begin on the shores of France, home to some of the most hallowed ground in the history of war.
Hello, I'm Lewis Turner. This is Omaha Beach, Normandy, France, site of the bloodiest battle fought during D-Day. Some 2,000 to 3,000 casualties and dead American men right here on this beach. It all started in the English Channel. Boats sailing across, then into Higgins boats where the gates to hell would open up, these ramps, and men would have to run out some 300 meters, more than 3 football fields up this beach, facing extraordinary machine gun fire by the Germans. Then make it up the cliffs and into tiny towns all across France to get a toehold and liberate the country from the Germans. Now, my colleague Jeannie Blaylock has made the climb up that cliff into a German machine gun nest to show you exactly the armaments the Germans had and what the Americans were facing.
So I'm up here to show you something. Historians say Hitler knew we were coming. He didn't know where, he didn't know when, but they fortified the heck out of Omaha Beach. I mean, look how thick these concrete walls are for the Germans. And the veterans who were here on Omaha Beach on D-Day tell me they fired their M1 rifles up here. It didn't do a hill of beans. So look how high up I am. I mean, Lou's way down there where our guys were. And the machine guns, the powerful machine guns of the Germans were just pounding our guys and pounding our guys. It was vicious. And what's more, the beaches were booby-trapped, loaded with wooden spikes and these metal hedgehogs and mines to rip up boats and blow up our soldiers. The Germans had set up a death trap.
By the end of the day, American troops at Omaha had won a very precarious toehold. When I say D-Day, we all think Omaha Beach, Saving Private Ryan, landing from the sea. But when those troops landed from the sea, there already were Americans and British troops in Normandy. And they'd, of course, done a parachute drop in the middle of the night. It's dangerous enough in broad daylight.
And to honor those paratroopers on this 75th anniversary of D-Day, reenactors, as well as a very special D-Day veteran himself. Jeannie is near Carrington, near the actual drop zones from D-Day, and talk about the anticipation.
Oh, Lou, what a magnificent day. My heart's pounding. I mean, look, everybody's looking up. Everybody's looking up. They are waiting for Tom Rice, the star of the show today, to parachute into that field right over there. And look at the crowds. I mean, they're huge. You can't even see how many people are here all the way down the road. Tom Rice, the man we've been telling you about, was an original D-Day paratrooper in 1944. He's 97 now, and when he comes down, watch, because he is going to be strapped in tandem to a man from our first coast, Art Schaefer from Palatka.
Do you remember being just scared to death?
Didn't have time for that.
This airborne soldier is truly a man among men.
What did you know about jumping out of an airplane?
Nothing. I saw a large poster.
For weeks now.
And I like that.
He comes out of the sky to fight on the ground. There may be a place for you in the airborne.
Before this big 75th anniversary in France, Mr. Rice teaching us about the paratroopers.
It showed a new activity going on. I was a risk taker.
He wanted adventure, so he signed up.
I directly joined the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment that was forming up in Camp Toccoa, Georgia.
And the training there documented in the miniseries Band of Brothers.
That's pig guts, boy.
Crawling through pig guts. Disgusting enough, but officers knew only the tough would make it. This famous scene, Mount Currahee, 3 miles up, 3 miles down.
3 miles up, 3 miles down.
And that mountain, that torture.
Oh, we ran Mount Currahee, which means stand alone all the time.
It did not do in a young Tom Rice. He joined the 101st Airborne, the Screamin' Eagles. So, on D-Day, 1944.
The signals were stand up and hook up. The red light goes out and the green light goes on.
He jumped with 13,000 American paratroopers right into Nazi territory. The mission, kill Germans, so the mass of soldiers from the beaches could move on in and ultimately free France. But Mr. Rice remembers they were told, when you jump out of the plane, keep your legs crossed.
They told us to keep your legs crossed because the Rommel's asparagus are mounted in the ground, and there's wires going from one treetop to another treetop, and it was an anti-airborne and anti-glider obstacle.
Yeah, he's saying asparagus. Hitler had ordered his general, Rommel, to set up booby traps. Cross your legs coming down, or the wires will slice you in half. And that takes us back here to Jump Day. 200 paratroopers on the 75th anniversary jump. No booby traps, just joy well earned.
Beautiful drive, beautiful jump, beautiful flight. Everything was perfect.
How you doing, Jeannie?
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
You landed in a great spot. You did it.
Yeah, I did it.
Is your heart beating a million miles a minute?
It is.
I want to know what you're feeling.
It's just like there's a lot of emotion because, just experiencing this with him was just, I can't even think of something better to do on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So,
could you steer those parachutes back there in 1944?
Could I do what?
Could you steer them?
No. Well, we cut them up, and that was bad business. We made scarves out of them, and the ladies made underwear out of them.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to see you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you for thanking me.
Well, you're most welcome.
Still such spirit from Mr. Rice. And he knows those parachutes back then, they were silk, a hot commodity. But now, a slap back to reality.
Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die.
Not glory, glory, but gory, gory. Paratroopers back in 1944 on D-Day in extreme danger behind enemy lines. And so they used this and secret codes. I asked the senior historian at the World War II Museum in New Orleans about this, Dr. Rob Citino.
So take these paratroopers in Normandy. You've landed. It's the middle of the night. It's dark. You're in some field, or you're on the edge of a forest. You hear some rustling in the forest. What is it? It could be one of your buddies. He's landed. He's trying to link up with the unit. I don't know. It could be a wolf. I mean, worst of all, it could be a German.
So let's put ourselves back into 1944 on D-Day in the dark. So Jeannie and Lou right now in the dark in France. I mean, it's pitch black.
We're whispering because you had to be quiet. You could not blow your cover.
No, we're talking Nazis, secret codes, and clickers.
Clickers.
So just imagine that you were one of the 13,000 American paratroopers who had to jump down in your parachute behind enemy lines in Nazi territory.
Unbelievable to think that they were at the mercy of the wind, too, because so many times, so often, they didn't make it to their intended target. And this was the best sound they ever heard.
The best sound of their lives. Let's hear the secret code from Tom Rice, who was an original paratrooper on D-Day, and he has the clicker he had on D-Day. Pitch black. You were lost.
We did not know where we were.
And the Germans?
He fired one time.
Everywhere.
As I turned my head, went right by my ear, and I heard it pop. The target for a sniper is the obligato, right beneath the neck. And once they hit you there, that's it. You've got no chance whatsoever.
Mr. Rice says it took a week to find his fellow paratroopers scattered after their jumps. And to find each other, they used clickers to make cricket sounds. He's demonstrating with an original clicker from D-Day.
You hear that?
Uh-huh.
All right, we'd cricket once. We'd listen for maybe a few seconds, up to maybe 10 or 12 seconds. We'd hear another one. The next cricketing would be, very soon we would be maybe facing each other. And so we give each other a big hug, and we knew our physical conditions. We knew what we looked like standing up straight, and we knew our elocution and how we speak to one another, and all of the cuss words that you can imagine. So we identified ourselves by those things.
Fascinating now, life or death on D-Day. Tom Rice all over the front pages of newspapers on D-Day in France, a tribute to all the young men who fought against Hitler with courage most of us will never achieve. And for the younger guys like Kevin Kroll from St. Augustine reenacting the jumps of Normandy, wow.
Amazing.
It was, oh my gosh.
Amazing.
So show your flag. What was it like? What are you thinking? You know, we want to know it all.
It was so absolutely beautiful looking at the sky and seeing all the chutes and seeing all the Allied nations in the air at once.
What was the moment like when you first jumped out of that C-47?
Just thinking that 75 years ago, these guys had no idea what they were going into. They had no idea if they were going to live to see their families again.
We saved the world. We saved the world from tyranny.
And yes, Mr. Rice is already talking about next year.
I will be back next year.
But we can't forget 97% of our World War II veterans are dead. We've lost them. And so now is the time to listen to these men who changed history.
Whatever say, ding, ding.
Herb Griffin was just a teenager.
We were throwing up on the floor and on each other. And you can see that water splashing over the side. We're standing up all the way to France.
Then he tells me on Utah Beach, he was sure he was going to die. And he didn't want his mom to get that telegram.
One thing that I thought about when I hit the beach, what is my mom and dad what they going to say when they get the telegram?
The memories chilling. Lou's talking with some D-Day veterans in Normandy, also from Utah Beach.
And these gentlemen, both D-Day vets, both stormed Utah Beach, had never met before until this day at the cemetery in Normandy, remembering what it was like.
I laid there scared for a while and everything else, and then finally I got that gun out. I said, well, if you're going to kill me, by God, I'll take it as many as I can with me.
I walked down the beach after the day was over and they were burying people already, or at least preparing for burials. And I said to myself, I was glad I was alive, but I wouldn't want to do that job because that was very hard. What you saw was the remains of a young guy who was fine a few hours earlier. That bothers me even to this day, even to this day.
If D-Day had failed, the war goes on a lot longer. I'm convinced, into 1946. And because so many people were dying per month, we're talking about a catastrophe on a vast human scale.
Some guys from Jack's Beach wanted to pay tribute. They came all the way to Normandy, to Omaha Beach and Utah Beach, paying tribute in the only way they know how. Motivation can come from a lot of places. This group of strangers were driven to Omaha Beach today, the site of one of the bloodiest and most important battles in modern warfare. All to pay homage to the men who stormed the beach on D-Day 75 years ago. But the motivation to honor was taken a step further.
Any 55 howitzers.
When down Omaha Beach came walking two WW2 vets to push them even harder.
Pleasure being here and in this historic place where a lot of brave men did their duty.
94-year-olds Roy Hiroque and Andre Chapaz.
For all of us, we were so many. We come by the thousands. And we come to do business, and we did.
The water in the English Channel is around 59 degrees.
This guy here, I don't know how you can stand there and no.
But motivated by tribute and by a little extra push from Roy,
get your ass in the water.
They took a bath and stormed the beach.
And we had a couple guys who fought in this war here, and it felt very generational.
Jack's Beach's Jason McCarthy founded this group called Go Ruck. It's a company that organized these tributes all week long.
There's no other way to describe it. You have to feel it for yourself. And so it was just an extreme honor. I mean, I'll remember this moment for the rest of my life.
As if walking in their footsteps wasn't enough, doing it in front of the men who helped liberate France and the world certainly lit the fire.
Yeah, it looks like they're capturing, they're going for the beach. Yeah. I mean, they really look motivated.
And Roy, the veteran you saw right there, actually has the French Legionnaire's Medal. And that was awarded to him by the French for liberating this country and all the work that he did there when, by the way, he was only 19 years old.
16 million American men and women put on the uniform in World War II. How many are left today? Just under 500,000. I know sometimes people say, well, that's a lot. It's 3% of those who served. 97% of that generation has passed away. And look, we just did D-Day 75. The next big anniversary is going to be D-Day 100. And it's a certainty the generation that fought World War II will no longer be with us at the time. So World War II, D-Day, anything that happened is passing from memory, where people can talk about what they did, into history. And it's going to be the responsibility of people like the National World War II Museum, of teachers, the primary level, secondary level, higher education, colleges and universities. We have to make sure, we all have to make sure that World War II is never forgotten.
All right, so welcome back. It's town square here, everybody enjoying themselves, relaxing, but a far different crowd from what happened 75 years ago.
Yeah, the contrast is really stark. And I tell you, when you try to imagine what this next gentleman we're going to introduce you to did, you really can't even fathom it. He's from Jacksonville. His name is Mr. Frank, and his son tells me that he had never heard his dad open up like he did when we talked. And I will never forget what he said.
Do you have a mascot?
Yeah, the little doggy, Queenie.
Fun talk.
I just turned 19.
And fun photos.
You just go in and do what you gotta do.
Yeah, okay. But not for long.
I think about him many a time.
John Frank, seaman first class, trained as a cook at NAS Jax. Then on June 6th.
7 o'clock in the morning.
1944.
Here's D-Day on the way in.
His job, the LCT.
Landing craft tanks.
He took equipment to the beaches. But then everything for him changed. You've seen the movie Saving Private Ryan, Omaha Beach, bloody Omaha.
I was just a kid. We were all kids.
He was sent in to pick up the bodies.
They couldn't get him out right away because of the mines.
And he experienced the one thing the movie could not portray.
They laid there for days and days and days, and it smelled terrible. To this day, if I talk about it or think about it, I can smell it.
And that wasn't all.
No, sometimes it's arms and legs. Sometimes they got no head. But we're picking up the parts and bringing them in. They put them on an army truck.
So you were doing that with your bare hands?
Yeah, bare hands.
But Mr. Frank is proud of his service.
You know, some people say that you all saved the world.
Well, you could say that, yeah. It took Hitler out of power. God knows where he was going to stop.
So for this 75th anniversary of D-Day, Mr. Frank wants to leave a message in Normandy.
So what would he put down? Liberation?
A little cross.
The cemetery.
You want me to put it there?
Yeah.
With his own handwriting.
Because a lot of men died that day. I know we picked them up.
And the rest of us can say thank you for your service.
75 years later, it still brings tears to your eyes.
Oh yeah, it does. It's a sad thing.
But it is hardly enough.
And so now we are here on Omaha Beach in Normandy, where you were, Mr. Frank, 75 years ago. And up over there is the American Cemetery. And I want to keep my promise to you, Mr. Frank.
Now, that's something. Brings back all the memories.
You could say that the Allies flew 11,000 missions that day to somewhere around 200 for the Germans, and air power is a necessity. There's no better feeling being a ground forces, right? You're on the ground, you hear aircraft engines in the air, they're flying overhead, you look up, stars and stripes, baby. It's the best feeling in the world. And British troops felt the same way about the Royal Air Force, Canadians about the Royal Canadian Air Force. You want friendlies overhead.
Jeannie and Lou back in Normandy for the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and this is something I did not know until I got here to France. I didn't realize, outside of the incredible somber ceremony at the American Cemetery, what happens in France on D-Day. I mean, there are thousands of people who stop to pay respects to America.
My grandmother always told me about the Americans. The Americans came in the tank, came into town and liberated us, and it just left a profound mark in me.
Amazing signs of gratitude, hugs, superstar treatment, even vets signing autographs.
To keep the memory alive.
And we are seeing this everywhere, the French hanging American flags on their houses. And near this road here, named Liberation, I saw a lady on a ladder. Now, I'm sorry I don't speak French, but you could tell by the look on her face and some English, she is grateful to the Americans for liberating her country.
Are you grateful?
Oh, yeah, yeah, very grateful. Perhaps it's the last D-Day.
Perhaps last D-Day?
Yeah.
For the veterans?
It's very important for us.
Because the veterans are getting so old?
Oui.
Yes, we. Okay, very good, merci.
And at the cemetery, I watched a woman from Belgium just stop and thank an American D-Day veteran, a man from Kentucky.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were very brave.
What did they do for your life?
For us, it was our freedom. He bring us our freedom.
And on the day itself, Frenchmen wearing United States military uniforms sharing a toast to the vets.
What I would say to a student is, well, why do I need to learn about this? I would say because it's the most important day in the history of your country. It's the most important 4 years in the history of your country. Why would you not want to know something about that?
So now let's turn to a very famous quote on D-Day. Thank God for the U.S. Navy. And it was not said by a naval officer, not even anybody in the Navy, but a very important person over there on Omaha Beach on D-Day.
Check out this monument. This is very impressive. This is dedicated to the United States Navy. Now, of all the monuments that you'd find around the beaches of Normandy and inland as well, this is the first one dedicated to our Navy, and it wouldn't have been possible if not for the veterans of Jacksonville and the dedication of the military on the First Coast.
Famous words on D-Day from the senior Army officer ashore at Omaha Beach. Just hours into the battle, our soldiers were in trouble.
The first wave on Omaha Beach was floundering.
The second wave pinned down. But then,
U.S. Navy destroyers started moving in toward the beach, pounding German gun positions from point-blank range.
and then that day, by sunset,
the Germans' wall was broken forever.
D-Day could not have happened without the Navy.
but for 6 decades after D-Day, more than 100 plaques and monuments went up on the beaches of Normandy, and not a single one
I just think it was a tremendous oversight.
to the U.S. Navy. So this veteran in Jacksonville pushed with gusto.
I'm Captain Gregory Streeter, U.S. Navy retired.
Captain Streeter inspired a campaign to raise money, $500,000 to create a Navy D-Day monument, unveiled in Normandy in 2008. And now Captain Streeter tells me he hopes it reminds people that we lost sailors on D-Day too.
By our count, we believe 1,026 sailors, I think, died on D-Day.
Their average age, just 19 years old. Some, the buddies of Ernie Corvese. Their job, to blow up the German booby traps on the beach, the mines on top of these poles.
I found out later that they were all killed. I was the only one left.
True sacrifice, now honored in Normandy, France, because of great effort from our Navy veterans in Jacksonville, Florida.
You know, Lou, as we wrap this up, I think about all the people we've met in France, the young people especially, who know what D-Day is and what it was, that the Americans came and spilt their blood right here on Omaha Beach so that freedom could come back to Europe, to rip out the Nazi war machine and doom Hitler right here. And I think about the little kids with books, and then the teenage girl, remember what she said?
The American people land in the Normandy beach.
What was important to you about D-Day?
The liberation of the France.
In English, best she can speak English, that the Americans came, they landed, they liberated France, and even little kids on the placemats at restaurants, they have pictures dot by dot, you know, connect the dot like we have, but it's the planes that the paratroopers flew in to Normandy. And it makes you wonder, are we teaching our kids in the United States and America to appreciate what freedom is, what our guys did back then?
D-Day is so important, what you just illustrated. Frankly, it changed the world. Here for a week around D-Day, it is a celebration, it is a memorial, but they go all out here in Normandy because they know exactly what it means for them. Think 4th of July in the United States, independence. Well, this is freedom for them, and it is why we must never forget the sacrifice that our men made.
And so, reporting from Normandy on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, Jeannie Blaylock with Lou Turner.
We are honored to be right here in France, the beaches of Normandy, for the 75th anniversary of D-Day.
Mr. Shakel, it's an honor to meet you, and I have to tell our audience, you started your military career where?
Camp Blanding,
that's
Florida.
our hometown.
We didn't know until General Eisenhower said, "The eyes of the world are on you," and this makes shivers run up and down my spine today.
We come by the thousands, and we come to do business.
And you know, we had a couple guys who fought in this war here, and it felt very generational.
It's an honor for me to have this picture. It's to keep the memory alive.
Look at all this. I mean, the reenactors here, they're everywhere.
Airborne!
Away! How was that? Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
It was, oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Beautiful jump, beautiful flight. Everything was perfect.
It's great to get those Jacksonville connections. Everyone here, reenactors who reenact the storming of the beaches. Let's celebrate the guys who are still alive and still with us 75 years later.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. the eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.